Alright guys, today we are going to be reacting to why all Germans get these on their first day of school. Jump in.
This is me on my first day of school back in the year 2000, but what am I holding there? Hello, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. We're in the middle of back to school season. Summer is coming to an end, and schools here in the US and for the most part in Germany are already back in session. In my home state Bavaria, the first day of school is actually tomorrow on September 12th. School breaks are determined by state in Germany, and summer break is done in a staggered way to make sure that not all Germans go on vacation at the same time and cause chaos on the streets and airports. And Bavaria is the last of the 16 states to go on their 6-week summer break, and therefore also the last state going back to school in September, right after Baden-Württemberg, who actually had their first day of school today. But no matter which region of Germany you live in, the first day of school is a big deal, especially when it's your first day of first grade. In Germany, that's when you officially become a Schulkind, as we say, a school kid. Unlike in the US, kindergarten or Vorschule aren't actually part of the school system, so kids really don't start school in that sense until first grade, which is usually at the age of 6 or sometimes 7. And the thing that all German kids probably look forward to the most on their first day of school is this, their Schultüte or Zuckertüte. This was mine, this was my brother's, but they really come in all different shapes and forms. Well, actually the shape doesn't vary that much. It's always a cone. That's why in English they're usually called school cone or sugar cone, and they're usually made out of paper or cardboard. Some kids make them themselves at home with their parents or even in kindergarten. That's why I made mine, with some help of course. I wasn't that handy as a child. I think I got to pick the design from an arts and crafts book, and I remember that I immediately fell in love with this mouse because I always loved animals, and then the kindergarten teachers helped me make it. But you can also buy them at the store. And for the first day of school, parents then typically fill up the cones with chocolate, candy, toys, but also school supplies such as pencil cases, crayons, pencil sharpeners, and other gifts. Once they're filled, they get tied up at the top so that the kids can't see what's inside, and then they proudly carry them to their first day of school. And then they typically open them when they're back home with their family, or at least that's how it was in my case. The traditions kind of vary depending on the region and the school, and I actually asked my German followers on Instagram to share how this was done in their region. So I found out that in some cases, the parents actually drop off the cones at school beforehand, and then they get handed out to the kids at school. And in the eastern parts of Germany, a lot of you guys told me that you actually have a big ceremony at school on the Saturday before the first day of classes, where the whole family comes, the kids get their sugar cones, as it's called there, and then everyone goes home or to a restaurant to celebrate. Which is honestly a lot cooler than doing this on your actual first day of school during the week when everyone has to work. But what's the purpose of the school cones? I would say that they really mark the beginning of a new chapter for German kids, because starting school is considered a big step that's worth celebrating.
Yeah, it is a big step, guys. You're now basically, well, you have kindergarten, but first day of school is basically when you are now in the lion's den, right? You're gonna go through a lot, right? So.
And the school cones are kind of a rite of passage. Some people also say that they're supposed to sweeten the thought of going to school for the next 9 to 13 years. There's probably truth to all of that. I can just say that making the school cone and carrying it to school definitely made me feel like a big kid at the time, and it made my first day of school feel even more special. Now, you might think that this is a rather new commercialized custom that the candy or school supply industry came up with, but it's actually a tradition that goes back over 200 years. It originally started in central Germany, in the regions of Saxony, Saxony-Anhalt, and Thuringia. The earliest reference is from the late 18th century, when a man called Karl Gottlieb Bretschneider from Gersdorf in Saxony wrote in his autobiography that he got a sugar cone from the schoolmaster, so the teacher. About 20 years after that, in 1802, there's a reference about a boy in Benshausen in Thuringia who received a big sugar cone, quote, according to custom, so it must have been a tradition for a while at that point. And there are more references from Jena, Dresden, and Leipzig from the early 19th century. This is a book from 1859, for example,
right there.
And it describes...
Right here. So what is it in size? Candy, I guess? Well, what is it? Cookies?
how the girl is walking down the steps carefully to make sure that the cone doesn't break. And the famous German author Erich Kästner, who started school in 1906 in Dresden, Saxony, described his sugar cone and how proudly he carried it around in great detail in his book Als ich ein kleiner Junge war. It also includes the story of how he tripped and dropped the sugar cone. Ich stand bis an die Knöchel in Bonbons, Pralinen, Datteln, Osterhasen, Feigen, Apfelsinen, Törtchen, Waffeln und goldenen Maikäfern.
Oh.
From central Germany, the
everything sugary.
custom then spread to Berlin and then to other parts of Germany, but it wasn't until after World War I that it actually became more and more of an established tradition. Well, in these early references, it was usually the teacher that handed out the cones. This responsibility was then passed on to godparents, and nowadays it's usually the parents' job. There's some speculation that the sugar cones might even go back to the Jewish tradition of baking letter-shaped pastries out of challah for the first day of school that are covered in honey, but there's no evidence that there's actually a connection to the sugar cone tradition. Today, the tradition is common in all of Germany, as well as Austria, where it was spread during the Nazi era, and apparently even in some parts of Poland and the Czech Republic, especially in regions that are close to the German
that thing is just spreading, huh?
border and those that used to be German territory at some point. What I found interesting is that the tradition doesn't really seem to be a thing in Switzerland, not even in the German-speaking part. Some of you guys messaged me that it's really just the German immigrants in Switzerland that do it there. Now, my school cone was round, but there are also hexagonal ones that are particularly common in the eastern parts of Germany, and apparently they also tend to be bigger there, 85 centimeters instead of 70 centimeters, which seems to be standard in Western Germany. And the tradition there also often includes a so-called Zuckertütenbaum, so a sugar cone tree that has a bunch of little sugar cones filled with candy hanging on it. Some of you wrote me that this was something your parents did, others said it took place in kindergarten. Either way, it honestly sounds really cool. And in one municipality in Thuringia, they actually make Zuckerschachteln, sugar boxes, instead of cones. They're round boxes that get decorated and filled with candy. One of my viewers actually sent me a few photos.
That's very nice, man. That is so nice, man.
Photos of hers. Nowadays, many people keep up with the tradition of the Schultüte even beyond first grade. Some kids get another small school cone when they start secondary school, which is usually in 5th grade. And some friends and family also do this for their loved ones when they start university or an apprenticeship. Now, before I came to the US, I honestly never thought about Schultüten as something particularly German. I always kind of assumed that this is a tradition that's done everywhere. So I was pretty surprised to find out that this isn't a thing in the US at all. Even though
nothing. Sugar cones, no. Nothing.
Americans are usually pretty big on those type of gifts and rituals and going all out. I mean, on graduation day, they have the tradition of wearing a cap and gown, and a lot of people take the time to individually decorate their cap. So you'd think that they would like to do something similar for the beginning of school too. Because school cones are super individual and a form of self-expression. You can literally turn them into whatever you like. And given that about 50 million Americans actually have German ancestry, school cones in the US don't seem too far-fetched, but hey, maybe it's not too late. You guys could still make it a tradition in the US. And to those of you who had a Schultüte as a kid, I know that that's one of the things in life that everyone remembers. So what did your Schultüte or Zuckertüte look like? And did you make it yourself?
I never heard about that. I remember just having, when I was like 11 or 10, I ate like a sugar cane cone thingy. I don't know what the hell it was. It had some cinnamon with sugar and something else, but you have to eat it from the bottom. But I don't know how to do with this. What do you guys think? I mean, I'm from America. I never seen. There's a bunch of kids around here, and never seen kids just carrying cones. So that's that. Very interesting tradition. But you know what's crazy? It's a good incentive to start the school year with a good note. And I think that's a great tradition. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think, guys, this is something that you guys still support? Or you guys think there might be some changes regarding the culture? I would love to hear your guys' opinion. Meantime, guys, I'll see you next one.